For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Shares in Asia Pacific once again having a rather mixed bag of things to digest and thus fairly mixed themselves. Economic data from the United States yesterday suggested once again a very, very difficult thing to actually comprehend. Retail sales, some doing quite well, some not doing quite well. However, China's industrial production and the general feeling about the economy doing reasonably well there. The Shanghai Composite basically paired some of its losses yesterday, but not doing too well. Offshore Chinese yuan weakened past 7 against the dollar. You remember yesterday we were talking about the measures that the Chinese government is trying to take to prop it up before the big meeting, the big symposium next month. Japan fell about 1%. Really, stock futures, let's turn our attention to the United States. The stock futures there, they're falling. Wall Street heads for a losing week. FedEx warning about the global economy. And I think a lot of people have taken that to heart. So stock futures actually falling. The Dow dropped by about 181 points yesterday. So shares of FedEx down 15% in extended trading as a result of their rather gloomy look at what's going on, soft global shipment volumes, macroeconomic problems. I mean, you sort of know all these things, but it's actually quite useful to see how it affects corporate companies which have a global view like FedEx. US retail sales not as good as some of the headline figures might suggest. Headline pointed to a 0.9% gain in August, but if you actually strip it out, overall it looks like the consumer's doing okay. Auto sales were up as well, but generally speaking, the markets took it as being a bit negative. And US mortgage rates, here's a difficult one. They're out of a 14-year high. So that's actually keeping people out of buying property, which is not good for the economy as a whole. I talked with Reuters yesterday about this Adobe Figma deal, $20 billion. It is a big deal. It's part cash, part shares. For those who are not in the business of building websites, it's probably relatively incomprehensible. But the reason that I'm talking about it this morning is that it's one of the very few startups that's given investors some kind of room for maneuver and some kind of joy in their investing, which the price at which Adobe is paying for it, the $20 billion, the company was valued at $10 billion. Figma was valued at merely $10 billion not that long ago. So investors really have done very, very well indeed. Everyone is very worried in Argentina right now. We're shifting our attention to Latin America. Interest rates by 550 basis points, 5.5%. That's up. Interest rates there now 75%. Inflation overshooting every kind of estimate there, and forecasts are not very good. As far as people are concerned, they're actually buying dollars, and they shouldn't be. They should be concentrating on the local currency, but they're not. They're buying dollars, and of course that's hurting Argentina even more. World Bank once again is warning that too much tightening will lead to a global recession. Again, regular viewers won't be very surprised by this. I don't really see how the World Bank actually manages to come out with these kind of predictions every month, because they're so obvious. I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, that if you're tightening, you're going to cause some kind of problems, because monetary policy is very clumsy. The clever side of all this would be actually to look at the Fed and look at the Bank of England and then say, okay, so they're raising at the moment, but when are they going to start reducing rates? Because that will be the next story. That's what I would expect a World Bank to be doing, not stating that, not keeping going with the art of the obvious, which is what it's doing right now. Talked a bit about Shell yesterday, again with Reuters, how Ben van Beurden has now stepped down after about, I think it's between 20 and 30 years of head of that organisation. Very unsurprising to see that they brought in a man who knows all about renewable energy, and that's the way that Shell and the big fossil fuels have to go. While Sawan, a chap who is expected, did most of his business training in the UAE, been to business school, he's got ticks all the boxes and so on. He's going to have to be quite ruthless. Turning our attention to the UK, and retail sales plunged in August by 4.5% after a slight respite of up by 0.3% in July. Biggest drop for a year. Rampant inflation, rising cost of living hitting wallets. It's all fairly obvious there. As far as the Prime Minister is concerned, she's pushing with the Chancellor, Liz Truss is pushing with Kwasi Kwarteng to bring about what they both would like to be the sort of big bang number two as far as it is concerned. And her offensive, a charm offensive now, is directed towards SoftBank and hoping that the ARM IPO can actually happen in London rather than New York. The bad news for London is, it might be quite good to have it, New York tends to offer kind of bigger valuations. And she's also pushing to make fracking easier as well in the country. As far as the Queen's funeral on Monday is concerned, Heathrow is halting a number of flights to keep the air above, or keep the atmosphere above the funeral as quiet as possible. Travellers are really advised to check with their airlines. And we now have a date for the tax-cutting budget. Most of the decisions, we're going to get the Bank of England talking about interest rates next week, but the tax-cutting budget, which Liz Truss and also Kwasi Kwarteng are placing a lot of their bets on, is happening on Friday. It'll be a mini budget. It won't be that mini, actually. You're talking about probably £200 billion of relief and so on. So it's not that mini, but in the basic programme of things, we're calling it a mini budget. That's on Friday. And finally, oil prices once again being hit by what they feel as though the United States not performing as strong as people would wish, and also China as well, not performing as strongly as investors would like. That's the global view.
Well, Michael, let's start with Kwasi Kwarteng. What has been described as a fiscal event that we should expect next Friday, September 23rd. Are we likely to get the details, with regard to, what Liz Truss really wants to do about the cost of the living crisis? Or after the event, we're likely, to start saying, oh, we're still looking for those details. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng have not come up with those details that the public is expecting. That's one. Argentina, yeah. Inflation in Argentina is already close to 80%. It's been double digit for almost a decade. So you may say it's not surprising. How do people survive in places like Sri Lanka, like Colombo, where we hear inflation figures 60%, 70%, and now we're being told that in Argentina, we're likely to get to maybe 90% or even 100% by the end of the year. Who do we blame in Argentina's case? The Peronists, the non-Peronists, or the lack of consensus in the management of the economy? And finally, Michael Jordan. Somewhere, some people are selling a jersey for as much as $10.1 million. Jersey, just a t-shirt for $10.1 million in the midst of, this crisis that everyone is facing, either in Argentina or Sri Lanka or in Colombo or in Lebanon, where people are now using toy guns now to force the issue. In some places, some people are going to auction to buy $10.1 million. It's like Kwasi Kwarteng, giving more money to the fat cats in the city of London. What do you think?
Well, what I think about T-shirts could be written on the back of a postage stamp, basically, and it probably would use the kind of language that is not suitable for a breakfast show. So I don't think we need to go any further down the Michael Jordan T-shirt as well. As far as Kwasi Kwarteng's concerned, I think one might accuse him of having a bit of a tin ear. No question about that. I think that there will be a lot of objections from various charities and so on about giving bankers bonuses. The thinking behind it is not something, as I said yesterday, that one can easily explain on the doorstep to people who are suffering from cost of living. But the thinking behind it is, if you offer bonuses, you can, number one, try to attract people into the City of London. And whatever you think about it, the financial centre provides a lot of tax towards the economy. It's an important part of the GDP as well. If the City of London is to achieve its big bang too and start to attract further banks, what's not to like about that? However, it doesn't go down very well, and there's that dichotomy. I think that Kwasi Kwarteng is being very bold, and he said that this is the time for bold thinking, and he won't be taking a lot of notice of that. But again, he will of course face criticism for that. Argentina, you look at the country and you think, Peronists, possibly. I mean, I think a lot of the people in the street are blaming the Peronist government. But then again, you would, wouldn't you? I mean, of course you would, if you see prices like that rising. And of course, inflation, as we know, tends to hit the poorest parts of society before it hits the richer, because they tend to be spending their money on things that massively increase in price, like food and energy, for example, and they tend to spend the larger part of their economy there. What's going to happen there? No idea at all. I think that they probably, you're looking at a huge amount of economic mismanagement, and before it starts to get debt relief and the rest of it, I think it's going to have to put its house in order, as all these countries are. Who's to blame? Don't know, really. It's very difficult to say. I don't think now's the time for blame. I think now's the time for help. Wouldn't surprise me if China gets in there, to be quite honest, because it would give them a foothold in their Belt and Road Initiative, which, as far as I can see, has left South America relatively alone right now.
Well, next. Yes, yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
And what was your first question was?
No, I think you've already treated the three. I asked about Kwasi Kwarteng. I talked about Michael Jordan's jersey.
Right.
Number
23. No, what you were asking is... what you were asking is very important. You're asking about the detail. Okay, so at the moment, we sort of know what's going to happen with households, but what business is waiting for is how they're going to be helped. I think that's absolutely crucial. And I would pray that despite all the other things going on in our country at the moment, there are civil servants working extremely hard, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and making sure that Friday is a big event as far as saying what this government is intending to do about the economy. I would be beating them with a big stick if they weren't. I would hope they're working very, very hard indeed in the background.
Well, I mean, we're expecting rate hikes next week from the U.S. Federal Reserve and also from the Bank of England. Meanwhile, the World Bank is saying that the kind of easing, that we were talking about in China yesterday may well be warranted to prevent the entire world tipping into a global recession next year. What would you recommend? Or we're faced with an inevitable, global economic crisis in 2023.
Yeah, and I think I would just repeat my comments about the World Bank that I made earlier on in my roundup. I mean, a child of 5 can see what the World Bank is saying. It's merely that. I mean, well, they are actually saying two things. They're first of all saying there's going to be a global recession if everybody keeps raising interest rates rapidly. Yeah, I think we get that. Number two, it's saying that what they describe as synchronized central bank action probably is the way to treat inflation. So what are they saying? I don't know. How clever it would have been for them to be able to say, look, yeah, we get all that. I mean, we get these warnings from the World Bank, it seems to me, every week. What I want to know is when central banks will be looking at the inflation figures, which will no doubt be falling because they just will. It's not an inevitable rise that's going to continue simply because inflation is calculated on a yearly basis. It doesn't, as I keep saying, it doesn't actually reflect the cost of living. It reflects the rate of the price of increases of prices. So, of course, now what I want the World Bank to say, if they are supposed to be looking at the rest of the world, is is, okay, we get all that. We get all the obvious stuff. The clever thing is when a central bank's going to start reducing interest rates. That's what I want to hear. That would make it a story for me, and that would make me admire people with bigger brains than mine. At the moment, everything is through a rearview mirror, as I often say, and it's not educative at all.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much indeed.
Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotis Ojiri joins us. Morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Tunu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. I'm very happy to see that inflation is front page on today's This Day newspaper, because in Nigeria it's at a 17-year high. And if we take a look at the numbers, year on year, 20.52% is the year-on-year figure for inflation in August. You can see across the board for every metric year on year, food inflation now 23.12%. Core inflation 17.2, urban inflation 20.95, rural 20.12. Now, month on month, we did see a deceleration. The Bureau of Statistics says, well, compared to August, maybe the harvest season might have increased supply a bit. Again, measuring month on month. So you see a deceleration, 1.7% headline from 1.82. Food inflation down by 1 to 1.98. And core, urban, rural, each and every one of them down. Now, still, if you ask the average Nigerian on the street how they feel, things are still painful with respect to the squeeze on disposable income. And also, I continue to say this every single time we talk about inflation, the impact on investment returns and savings. This is yesterday's Business Day newspaper. I think when Mr. Feni was going through the headlines. Yesterday's Business Day newspaper, this was the headline. Negative real returns hurt Nigerian investors and savers. And this came out Thursday morning. Inflation came out Thursday afternoon. So this is already something that is in the public space that is impacting the saver. And we can demonstrate this. Let's take a look at a simple random example here. If we look at the real rate of return, using the 364-day treasury bill. I think we had an auction earlier this week, right? So if you use a 364-day treasury bill, it's at 9.75%. We're not even talking about 182 or 90 days. Those ones are even less. 9.75. August inflation at 20.52. You subtract your inflation from your return, you're getting your RRR is your real rate of return. It's negative 10.77. You can use anything you want. You can use savings, you can use bond yields, you can use the stock market year-to-date return. So the thing is, this is the pressure that investors and savers are facing here in Nigeria. Now, some analysts will argue that, well, you can't just use August inflation. You should use the average rate of inflation for a full year. Even then, average inflation for 2021 was what, 13 or is it 14%? It's still double digits. It's still higher than what you're seeing here. So look, it's front page. Every presidential candidate should be talking about this. We had William Ruto's quote yesterday where Ruto said that you have to increase producers of agricultural products in order to increase crops, in order to get more food on the table, and then try to bring down pressure on food inflation there. Is that something that also needs to be done here? So it's something that the leadership or potential leadership has to be talking about with respect to what to do, because this is a major problem. Inflation is caused Jeff Bezos and Joe Biden to fight on Twitter, or at least the White House. Inflation is causing Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng to question the Bank of England's methods. I mean, the Bank of England released a survey yesterday or the day before. Confidence in the Bank of England among UK citizens is at an all-time low because of inflation. So this is a huge thing. It's causing, we talked about Ghana's numbers. They had a protest on the streets back in June. So this is a big issue here. M-Pharma, we moved to the pharmaceuticals. M-Pharma, Ghana's M-Pharma has taken, or rather no, Asman Air, excuse me. Okay, either way, we can start with this. M-Pharma has taken a majority stake in Health Plus. It's a strategic move for M-Pharma. They provide pharmaceutical services with an online platform here in Nigeria. And basically, they're going to use this opportunity with the majority stake in Health Plus to broaden their footprint across Nigeria. Again, when it comes to these types of services, our population really is attractive for a lot of these companies. Aviation, very quickly, Asman Air, NCAA has suspended their license. We understand it's because of debts in excess of over 1 billion naira that's been owed to them. So their air operator certificate has been withheld. Also, I think we go to Cellulant and Orange Money. Cellulant is a tech company that's essentially trying to spread scale payments across the African continent. We had the CEO on the Global Business Reports a few weeks ago in Nairobi. So they're partnering with Orange in Botswana in order to allow for wallet transfers to be associated with bank accounts to make the ease of fund transfers possible in Botswana. And then finally, Vodafone has rolled out 5G in Tanzania. And basically 5G it's spreading. It's going to get 5G across the African continent to, make your calls easier, make transfers faster and so on and so forth.
In spite of the best efforts of conspiracy theorists.
That
I'm sure you
causing,
remember some
COVID
of those
and all
theories.
those weird things.
Yeah. But two things, inflation. You've talked about the effects of inflation, which we can all see and feel. But what do you make of CBN's idea of the cause of inflation and that we need to be weaned off our love of all things, foreign?
Yeah, well, that's just one. That side is looking at the import bill and patronizing more made in Nigeria goods. The CBN has continually talked about structural issues. So the lack of electricity to power some of the power these industries that are from the agriculture, using easily perishable goods that have to go from the farms to our tables. If you look at what power does with respect to the costs, cost increases for the average business, where 40 to 50% of their overheads go to us. But look at what diesel is now, from about 300% increase. Those kind of pressures are what fuel inflation increasing. Insecurity, farmers can't go to the farms as well. So you have to look at those type of issues and address them in order to try to bring these numbers down. Because the CBN's inflation target is 9%. And as you can see, it's 9%, 23.1, 23.1, so that's pretty far out.
Secondly, the lack of political will to get rid of subsidy. Have you seen what's happening in Haiti? Complete bedlam.
Exactly.
So we now sort of see in real time why. There are lootings, there are murders, there's arson. They're going completely bonkers in Haiti.
It is, yeah.
And that's what I imagine government here is trying to prevent. But what should the next president do? The
next president has to address the fuel subsidy matter by removing it, maybe gradually. Maybe that's what they have to do gradually. Or if you're going to yank it off, Zainab Ahmed again suggested that 5,000 naira cushion for transportation. You've got to transfer that money elsewhere in order for the blow to be, the impact of the blow to be felt less. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't have, there's a trust deficit where a lot of citizens say, well, if they remove subsidy, how do we know they're going to move that money elsewhere? So that's what the next president has to face, and he has to do it quickly.
Okay, yeah, it's good you mentioned William Ruto again, who has taken this bold decision very early to remove fuel subsidy. Okay, but the people of Kenya, they are groaning.
Yeah,
Subsidy was not removed from diesel and kerosene. Even the cost of diesel and kerosene has gone up. Now in Kenya, for you to buy petrol, it's 179 shillings, about 1.3 US dollars, we're told. But I guess the lesson from that is that if you're a leader, if you have to take hard decisions, you probably should do it immediately when you are still enjoying the honeymoon with the people. If you wait, as Nigeria probably did in 2011, 2012, for about 6 months, when the honeymoon is over, there will be more issues. But I just hope that there will be a welfare package, a palliative package, some kind of, what do you call it?
Cushion,
Yes, for the people of Kenya, so that we don't move from, this pure pragmatic economic decision into social chaos, or what they call in Nigeria consequences of the removal of subsidy. That's one. Two, M-Pharma, partnering with Health Plus. Okay, all that is fine. Nigeria is a big market, as you try to point out. And M-Pharma is technology-driven. They've been able to scale up big time in terms of their operations across the African countries where they operate. But the issue in healthcare in Nigeria will still remain affordability.
Thank you.
We can have very nice, pharmacies across the place, retail outlets, many of which I see now increasing in parts of Nigeria. But it's about affordability.
Okay, indeed.
The average Nigerian still doesn't have access, to affordable healthcare, patient-centered healthcare. And that's where the big problem is. What the government does about that is something, again, that the next administration in Nigeria will have to worry about. Either in terms of health insurance, on how to upgrade, our health institutions. The big elephant in the room is inflation figure. Now it has crossed the psychological threshold of 20%, right?
Yep.
In July, it was 19.6.
Yep.
Now we're talking 20.52.
Yep.
Now, when you break it down year on year, we understand it's even higher in some states.
Yes.
There are states in Nigeria now where we're told that inflation is about 25.2%. Ebonyi, Bayelsa, as the report indicated. What does this mean in real terms? It means that life is becoming tragic for us. I hope we will not get to the level of Lebanon, where people will be carrying toy guns around
to go and get their money out of the banks.
Get their money out of the bank. Or in Sri Lanka, where inflation is over 70%, or in Colombo, where it is over 60%, or in Argentina, where it is already in the 80% range and could reach 100% by the end of the year. And in many of these other countries, where basic economics, rational economics is no longer working. But what I find curious is the point raised earlier, I think by Tundu, with the spokesperson of the CBN blaming the victim, saying that the reason we're in these dire straits is because we like to consume foreign goods. Well, is that an explanation?
No.
I don't know whether that makes, will pass the test of common sense.
Right.
But you see economists, they say all kinds of things. On one hand, on the other hand.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, the Monetary Policy Committee is going to meet on September 26th.
Yes.
Now, some people have said, with inflation now at such a high rate, over 20%, is the CBN, which has already increased, interest rate up to about 14% now, right?
Yeah.
Will it consider a 50 basis points increase? And if the CBN does so, will it work? Okay, because all measures, adopted in other places, tried here in Nigeria, all those measures have not worked. So, finally, I don't think the issue is supply side. It's demand side.
Right.
As the CBN spokesperson was trying to point out, it's about supply side.
Right.
There's no productivity in this economy. We import virtually everything.
Yep.
Our foreign exchange regime is chaotic. And then, of course, we also have this crude oil theft.
Right.
What other people in other parts of the world are benefiting from, Nigeria does not benefit from it.
Right.
Even between Ukraine and Russia, they've been able to work out a deal about wheat and
grains,
all of that and grains. Yes, I mean, but here the cost of bread is still going up. We are not benefiting.
Right.
The spot price of crude oil is going up. We are paying more here for petrol that is under some people's bedroom in parts of the country. So this misalignment, we just hope that the people who want to run Nigeria from next year will bring some quality intelligence to how this country is run and put an end to what I referred to yesterday as the perpetual reign of mediocrity.
Well said.
Well,
thank you, Ruto.
That's why I asked Chip, the CBN spokesman. He effectively said, if the people cannot eat bread, then let them eat cake. That's what he said.
Not right.
Send him some history books.
Exactly.
He needs to read some. Thank you.
Thank you so much.